Welcome to another episode of the Lakeboat Time Machine. We're now traveling back in Great Lakes maritime history to stop and have a clear look at a single moment and a visit with some of the people residing there. The date is August 30th, 1900, and we're in Buffalo, New York. The 326-foot steel-hulled oreboat Alva is awaiting our arrival. Constructed at Cleveland in 1893, she was the first oreboat to be built with stockless anchors. Here she is at the Lackawanna Ore Dock, unloading 3,800 tons of blast furnace chow that she hauled down from Two Harbors, Minnesota. At this point in time, the Lackawanna Ore Dock had one of the least modern unloading rigs on the Great Lakes. These are the Thornberger steam unloaders. Let's take a closer look. Here we see the same Thornbergers from the opposite direction. Notice the huge gears near the top of the trusses. They are directly attached to the crane arms. The entire 6 cranes are steam-powered from this room. The boilers that create the steam are fed by this guy, shoveling coal into this chute from a rail car. Each crane arm has a single bucket. Here we see one empty bucket being lowered into the Alva's cargo hold, and one filled bucket being raised. These dump buckets were extremely common at Great Lakes ports. The buckets were often called automatic dump buckets and could be used on the big gantry hoists. Yet they were commonly used as manual dump buckets. They worked like this. When unloaded, their center of gravity was low and tended to keep them upright. When loaded, their center of gravity was higher, making them top-heavy. This latch prevented the loaded bucket from tipping over. Pulling down on the handle or mechanically striking this catch plate caused the latch to let go, and the bucket to tip itself over and dump its contents. Once empty, it tipped back to its latch position, waiting to be refilled. On the Thornberger unloaders, the buckets moved from ship to shore by simply swinging freely suspended between the 2 arms of each crane. Here we see a great example of how the automatic dump buckets were quite manual. This ore handler dumps a bucket by elbow grease alone, while unloading the schooner barge Zapatak. Meanwhile, back at the Lackawanna dock, we see the same operation. A single bucket being dumped by one workman, who is, of course, supervised by management. But these 2 guys are just hanging out, and management doesn't even seem to care. That's because these ore handlers are not paid by the hour. Remember, they're paid by the ton. Also note these unused buckets. They came in different sizes for different cargoes, or some were simply worn out. In the background is an interesting sight. It's the 292-foot steel package freighter Mohawk. She's just arrived from Duluth carrying 21,740 bushels of barreled flour and under the command of Captain S.R. Jones. And for you steam railroad buffs out there, also seen in the background is this historic steam switch engine. Although my dad was a railroad engineer for the C&O for more than 30 years, and for me, climbing aboard a railroad engine was like walking into Dad's office, I am not a train expert. If, however, any of you out there can give my viewers of this video any solid information on this steam engine, please feel free to write as much as you want in the comments section of this video. And pass the word along to your fellow foamers. As we look at the buckets going in and out of the Alva's cargo hold, what we don't see is how they are loaded once they're down inside the boat. In case you haven't guessed already, the answer is the buckets are filled by 3 men or 4 men with picks and shovels. Natural iron ore is very dense, and as it dropped from the loading chutes, into the lakeboat's hold, it tended to compact itself, making it difficult to shovel. So generally, picks were needed to loosen it for shoveling. Among all of this manual labor, there is one bunch of workmen who have less of a manual job. Those are the crane operators. You cannot see them, but they're seated here. Inside these little cabins, notice that each bucket swings out directly over their head. Also notice the large chunks of spilled iron ore on the cabin roof. That's why these guys are not seated in the open. Yet among all of the noise and clatter, steam and iron ore, if we take a real close look, we can see two ladies just standing outside of the Alva's guest cabin. Perhaps they're friends of Captain Mulholland, the commander of the Alva, or guests of the company. They are taking in the sights and enjoying the end of August and summer's last whisper. After all, there is plenty to see out in the harbor, such as this fleet of Erie Canal boats rafted together, or this nifty shipyard across the harbor. There's a tug under construction, and there's some sort of a large scow up on shore, plus this large hull. Aboard it is a good-sized boiler and a crane for moving it. But our automatic return device just went ding, and it's time to go back to the future. That's better than being one of the guys down in the cargo hold with the shovel, at least for me.